All right, let's do it live on a Monday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. What a job out of you last night. That was beautiful. The dream team, the three-man booth. Love to hear it. Love all about it. I thought that was special and a pretty dang good end to the preseason for your Cleveland football Browns, my friend.
Yeah, it was a great trip down to Atlanta. I had a blast with Jim and Doug, and can't thank them enough for their generosity to have me up there. And it was fun. And what was even better was that for the first quarter, obviously you didn't have everybody, but it did feel like you were watching the real Cleveland Browns for a little bit. You had Baker out there throwing darts, which was lovely. Yeah, go ahead, hop in. Let's go.
This is what I wanted to it's fun now. Was it fun in the moment for you? Because every time Kareem Hunt started to run with the ball, I held my breath.
Definitely there were nerves. Obviously, as we boarded the team plane Saturday, to go down there, that's right when J.K. Dobbins happened. And so that was very fresh on everybody's mind. And, so in the moment, it was really fun because it actually felt like a real game for a second because of Baker and Kareem and the offensive line out there and seeing, Malik and John Johnson and Anthony Walker on defense. But there were some nerves, obviously, and it was really, you're right, it was more around Kareem because he was carrying
I knew
five
Baker
guys.
would get rid of it.
Right, would be okay.
I knew he'd get rid of it. He'd protect himself. Everything would be quick. The ball would be out of his hands. I know our offensive line's elite. I didn't think anything would be caving in on his feet. I really wasn't worried about 6. It was Kareem. I was worried about him on the turf. I was worried about him being twisted on a tackle. He's so relentless in his running style. Fighting for an extra half yard. I thought, my God, don't do that. Just please go down. That's where I just wanted him out. Get out. Get in. Get out.
And they did, and I think there's probably a reason why, we threw it when Kareem was in the game, and in fact, basically the first half when Case and Baker were in the game, we were throwing the ball 3 times for every time we ran it. I think at one point we had 33 passes and 11 rush attempts, which I think part of that is it's easier to keep people safe in those scenarios from the quarterback position. It was great to see, Anthony Schwartz, his debut for the Browns, and you could see his speed drawing that pass interference, and then it felt like you could throw a 6-yard hitch to him anytime that you wanted. Like that it was just a long layup or a long handoff, as Bill Walsh would say in the West Coast offense, because he was getting 10, 12-yard cushions every time he lined up. And I thought we got to see some fun things, which we'll talk about in more detail when Dearness and Demetric Felton were on the field together. But just watching Baker, he was 6 of 10. 2 of the incompletions were hit at the line of scrimmage. He also had that pass interference penalty that was drawn. 6 of 10, 113 yards, touchdown, quarterback rating of 132. Could have been higher. I still think we need to get to a point where pass interference penalties count in passing yards.
I would like to go pass interference penalties are not spot fouls.
That's
I would
also
like them
fine.
to be 15-yard penalties. I hate the idea of a 40-yard penalty. I understand why they're there. I agree with you. If they're there, then they should be considered passing offense. But in general, I think a 15-yarder I prefer to, and an automatic first down, I prefer to a 40-yard penalty.
It needs to be. There needs to be kind of like in the NBA where there's a determination if it's a clear path breakaway.
Okay.
Where I do think if, let's say, somebody just gets roasted and then all they can do is tackle the guy or trip him up or grab his jersey because it was a clear touchdown, that's a different penalty than just, they threw a one-on-one 50-50 ball and my cornerback didn't turn his head around.
Yeah.
So, I'm with you on that.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's appropriate. Yep.
I'm in on that.
I'm in.
I thought Baker really did he just looked crisp. And his ability, which obviously Dan Orlovsky has noticed a great many things about Baker Mayfield, but his ability to roll left and throw moving left as a right-handed quarterback, I was, in the running in Montana. I was big time there. You in California, obviously. But that's for a right-hander, that's one of the more difficult throws to make, and Baker does it as well as anybody in the National Football League.
It's one of those throws that being a right-hander and having played quarterback at Concord de La Salle in the Bay Area.
Ooh, boy.
Power. That I actually,
perennial power.
I threw a lot to
Were you playing with
Amani
Maurice
Toomer.
Jones-Drew back then?
Yeah, and Amani Toomer, a little older.
Yeah,
a little older. The thing about the roll left, throw right, it's you actually can create a ton of torque doing it if you can get your hips right. It's really the hips. You've got to get the hips right because your torque is amazing. You put a lot on it that way. And I actually enjoyed it. Even with the boys, I'll make them do it, and because it forces you to get your hips right. And Baker, that's the thing that's so incredible about him and the transformation. And we've said it before. It's worth saying again. What he has endured to get to this point is remarkable, and probably would have broken other quarterbacks.
So
just
run
in
a lot
terms
of them
offenses.
out of the league, no doubt.
I am watching Josh Rosen last night, and I'm thinking, boy, you watch Sam Darnold, and you just go, geez, weaker men would have folded under what Josh Allen's had one coordinator, one play caller.
Yep.
That's it. That's the list. Baker's had a lot to deal with, and I think trust came in for him about halfway through last year in what he was being asked to do, that his offensive line was great. And now over this offseason, what I would say is most from our standpoint, just a glaring improvement. This dude looks like Oklahoma Heisman Trophy winner Baker. He is so cocksure. He is so confident. He knows the answers to the test. His footwork is impeccable. That throw, the touchdown to Cordell Hodge that is a tough throw, man, in a split second in a window that's minuscule. And yeah, we've been saying that too, Dan, on this show. He's got a rope. He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. He's incredibly accurate. He is that's why you said hug him.
That's right.
As a rookie, hug him.
You were over there towing the company line. I was just,
right.
Let's hug him. I believe
hug
in
him.
motion.
Where's 6?
6? Yeah, where is he? So the word that I've used all off season, and you as well when we've talked about this from, since he came back at minicamp and then through training camp, command. He just has complete command of this offense. I got a chance to talk with Alex Van Pelt last week, and the footwork and the improvement that he's made there. He says that just was what keeps you on time. Your feet tell you where you are in your progressions, where the ball should be going, and if you do that right, it makes it so that you're going to complete a much higher percentage of your passes, and they're going to be more accurate. And Baker looked very good. It's just that command, and as he was walking out of the tunnel at the end of the night, I told him, it was great to see you out there. I said, looked sharp. And he said, it was just great to be out there. That's what I love to do, is to play this game. And
yeah,
he does not have voices in his head, multiple voices in his head.
Nope.
He knows exactly what his responsibility is. He knows every play call. He is working, hand in hand with Stefanski and AVP. And this offense has an opportunity, I think, to be significantly more special than people around the league think. Nobody thinks about our offense being, a top 5 offense. I don't think. And I think we have a chance to be a top 5 offense in the NFL. I mean, real explosive.
I have no problem with that. I think we spent so much time talking about the defensive improvements that we forget that we're getting Odell Beckham Jr. back. We forget that it's everybody else running it back. We forget how great our offensive line is. We forget that we have not only Nick Chubb but also Kareem Hunt. And then you add Demetric Felton. You think about what Schwartz could give you from here to there. It's 4 or 5 plays a game. You think about the continued evolution of Donovan Peoples-Jones. Yeah, it does. It's a lot of good luck stopping all this. By the way, Chief, let's not sleep on what the Chief, I think, is in for this year.
I agree, because he's got that one. He has the combination of size, speed, athleticism that is unmatched in his room. And by the way, Austin Hooper out there last night, you get a zero blitz over the middle, and you run a little pick play on the left, and Donovan Peoples-Jones does his job, clears out Hoop's guy, and he scampers, 35 yards on that. Don't forget about Austin Hooper as well. But here's where the Browns' first 6-7 drives all ended yesterday. And I think this is just fascinating. Last line of scrimmage. Atlanta 9, Atlanta 22 touchdown, Atlanta 3, Atlanta 14, Atlanta 39. So the entirety of the Mayfield Keenum all went down into Atlanta territory. On the night, all but one of our drives crossed the 50 and ended in Atlanta territory. Only one did not on the entire evening, which I think is a fascinating note. And the only reason you didn't get past the 39 on the final drive of the first half was the clock ran out.
Right. it.
I mean, they were moving the ball into the red zone at will. Baker had 2 trips down there. Case had 2 trips down there. Lauletta had 3 trips down there. I mean, yes, and I realize this is the preseason, but my point is this has a chance to be – it is such a good scheme, so much talent to be a dominant team.
Is Gibby drinking whiskey?
You had a look on your face that was such a smile
and
such
saw...
intrigue. Oh, it's apple juice.
It's one of those things, Martinsons or whatever. So I
your
look
mic's
over.
off, buddy. If you had an on-air light, maybe it wouldn't be.
If you had a light, you wouldn't have
that
problem. If you had a light, you only had a light.
You'd know. On.
I look over.
No excuses, but little sleep.
I look over, and I just see you're giving this incredible detail. I look over, and I just see Gibby bottoms up, and all I see is a clear glass with the color similarities of a whiskey, and I'm thinking, my God, what's happened over there?
And out of the corner of my eye as I'm shotgunning this apple juice, just because it looked good, I wanted to have an apple juice. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm like,
delicious.
He's looking at me right now.
I didn't know if you were looking at me. I didn't know if you were looking at Gibby.
Oh, no.
But I knew that you were intrigued with something.
It looked like one of the, like a whiskey tumbler.
Yeah.
And that he was, the hell with it.
Quite refreshing.
It's Monday at
I kind of needed
1 o'clock. Yeah, no, they're great. They're great. No, it was fun. And look, there are other standouts. One other thing I want to ask you about, and it's one other thing I want to run by you.
Okay.
And it's an appreciation for Kevin Stefanski preseason football. And you had an interview with him last Thursday on the Coaches Show, which is incredibly illuminating, where he spoke of the way he views preseason. We're going to run a lot of the same stuff. Look, it's preseason. He understands that preseason football, he used the word work, but there's a lot of different definitions for work.
Sure.
It's an extension of camp. So this is about getting in the work. It's about getting in the repetitions. And to have a coach who doesn't even think about it I don't need to see somebody kick a 26-yard field goal. It's far more valuable for us. We'll get to that. It's far more valuable for us to see Baker in 4th, and we didn't get it. But so what? We got to practice a situation. We got to practice a situation in a game that doesn't matter. The very next play, Atlanta is driving, and Arthur Smith at midfield punts it on 4th and 1. And I just thought, why? Why are you doing that? What good is that? I understand Matt Ryan wasn't playing, but what is the point of that?
And then when he went for it the next time, we stopped him. Due in large part to Kevin Stefanski. I want to say that had to be the first quarter or the second quarter. It was early in the game where he challenges the spot.
Challenge it. First quarter.
Correctly challenged the spot, which was a real delight.
Yeah. Yeah. He views it as this is practice. This is getting in work. And I know you didn't hear the broadcast because you were doing your own. But as I was bouncing back and forth between your guys, it's hard because you guys are ahead of TV.
Yeah.
So it does make for a tough viewing experience as much as I love the three of you. So I would bounce back and I would hear what Collinsworth and Michaels had to hear. And at one point, Collinsworth says, I think we're going to get to an 18 game sooner rather than later, which is what we've all been saying. And Al Michaels goes, thank God. I'm for that. Basically, essentially, thank God. Like, I've had enough of this. Like, these aren't good. There aren't people in these stands. The Dobbins thing over the weekend.
There were not many people in the crowd, and those who were
echoed,
Browns fans.
It echoed around the country. There was the Cowboys game looked like they had about 18 people in there. And Trevor Lawrence played a lot because I think Urban thinks it's a regular season game and he had to win it. And Lawrence played a lot, so I think it's but there was nobody there.
Yeah.
So everybody's noticing this. Everyone knows that it is what it is. But I think that I do appreciate the way Stefanski does the preseason. I think it's the right way to use these games.
And I think he got exactly what he wanted out of it. And the fact that we were able to get the guys in, get them out, Baker Mayfield and the offensive line, healthy and have that success with it. I think that's exactly what he wanted for it. But he is smart. And I think if you listen to him, he actually gave some pretty good illumination. Week 1, by the time you get to your week 1 game in training camp, you are still in install. You're just kind of going through it. Week 2, you don't play your starters. You give them their joint practice, and that's where they are able to get all that good work and the situational football work that he wants to get. And then by week 3, okay, let's let select people go out there and experience real football. And that's kind of the program he has. Now, with 2 preseason games, that'll change. By the way, I've decided I like 17 games. There's no 8-8 BS, as Jeff Fisher would say. You are either have a winning season or a losing season.
Yeah. I like 16, but
sure.
This is inevitable that this is where we're going. It's a good point. You're not going to have no 500.
Right.
Went to state school, and even I can get to that point where there will be no 500 fake winning records. There will be none of that. In terms of other things that grabbed the attention, I believe we had Malik McDowell, specifically you did last week. I mean, we've been talking about him for over a week. He just wrecks things.
Okay. So Malik McDowell and Jordan Elliott, and they seem to Jordan Elliott seems to get some energy being next to Malik McDowell. Those two absolutely dominated this game.
Yep.
Without question. You go and you look at what those two did while they were on the field, and these are Pro Football Focus grades and some of their stats, but your top-graded players in the game, you had Malik McDowell obviously was up there. Jordan Elliott with his pressures, with his sacks, with his dominant play where he broke up that run in the backfield. Malik had a sack, a couple of pressures. Those two together were fun to watch. And Malik McDowell on one particular play, which I got lucky that I saw it, because when you're doing the games up there in the booth, you follow the ball quite a bit.
Sure.
But the play where he took the center back 5 yards and power bombed him on his back like he was a child was so impressive. He's now done that 2 games in a row. Mm-hmm. And as one of the coaches was walking out of the tunnel, I joked and said, did you see that play where Malik threw the center back? And he goes, no. And I pulled it up right off of Twitter. And the comment cannot be shared on the air, but it was admiration, exuberance, and almost, oh my God. Yeah. Malik McDowell was very, very impressive, continues to be, and honestly, he looks like somebody that the future is now. Like that you could put him out there against the Chiefs and expect him to play and play well. Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who haven't paid it, and I don't blame you for not paying that close attention to this story, because this is a bottom roster guy when he comes in here. And if you didn't watch college football intently,
2016, right?
In 2016, 2017, you wouldn't have. I don't know if you've had a point of reference, but Malik McDowell is one of the best defensive linemen in America at Michigan State. He was a monster on the defensive line at Michigan State. He is a first-round talent, and my guess is if you went back to the draft grades at that time, coming out of that season, he would have been graded on a first-round level from a talent standpoint. There were questions off the field going into the draft.
Yep.
There was an ATV accident that happened in the summer after he's drafted in the second round by Seattle.
Yep.
That he doesn't play in Seattle. He's physically unable to perform. He does not play. This is his first NFL experience that he's had. He did spend time in jail. He's had it very rough. He's made some mistakes. But from a talent standpoint, this is a guy that I believe it was 2017 when he came in. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it was the 2017 draft. I think he played the 16 season and 2017 draft. This is a guy that from a talent standpoint is a 1.
Yes.
And that's what he looks like.
Yes.
A 1.
Yeah, he looks like a real dominant force. And Jordan Elliott also, I thought, looked like a very dominant force in this game. And he's had 2 good games in a row. Those 2 together against the Giants were very good. And yesterday they were very good. We'll get into some of the guys that maybe made an impression, probably not for the roster, but made an impression for the practice squad that I thought stood out and really helped themselves in the game on both sides of the football yesterday. But, yeah, there is no doubt you have a problem at defensive tackle. And you have a first world problem. A great problem. Yes.
Yeah.
Great problem to have. You have far too many people. Now, by the way, Sheldon Day playing defensive end played pretty well last night late in that game. Got a sack, probably should have had 2, was held multiple times, had 4 total pressures there rushing off of the edge. So I don't know if that was him saying, look, I can do this as well. But you've got Billings, Malik Jackson, Jordan Elliott. Now, Tommy Togiai from an on-field exclusive is way down the list. He's behind Billings, Jackson, McDowell, Elliott, clearly behind Sheldon Day. He's probably right now, just if you're judging on the field, but he's somebody they believe in, was a fourth-round pick in this draft this year.
Right.
So now you have 6 guys, all of whom are very good. All 6 cannot be here.
No. So you think about trade. You think about is there some position versatility where you rob out of the DN room to help the D tackle room because you just want, we've heard a lot this offseason about agnostic positionally, right? Guys who can bounce around and bounce between positions. And we drafted JOK in part because of his ability to bounce around. We've talked about the 3 safeties all being the same body type when they're all healthy and the things you can do. So that could be something that you could look for as tomorrow we cut down to 53.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably get into the specifics of what you're talking about in a second. But, Malik McDowell is a guy who at the rookie minicamp, and Stefanski told us on the show on Thursday, played exclusively defensive end in that rookie minicamp. And so he has some versatility. Sheldon Day does. We'll talk about who stood out yesterday. Cameron Malveaux obviously is the name, and we'll talk about his story, I'm sure later on we get into more depth. But is there a 4th defensive end that you feel compelled that you must have on this roster? And that's a question, obviously, that Andrew Berry and Chris Kiffin will answer. But I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know the answer if you said, okay, we're going to cut Malveaux, Porter Gustin, Joe Jackson, and Weaver. The likelihood that you're able to bring 2 back into or 3 back into your program, I feel like is probably pretty high.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and that's the type of work that Andrew Berry's doing right now.
Yep.
They're doing that work right now. Paul DePodesta, Andrew Berry, smartest people. They're doing it right now. Those were your OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copper provider of your Cleveland Browns. They have all the X's and O's for your office. You can call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Coming up next, we will go through some of the positions, the toughest decisions, give you an idea on what this schedule will look like this week. It is Tuesday at 4. We got to go from 80 to 53, as the rest of the NFL does too. Could be a wild couple of days. Lots to get to here on the program. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop here from my friends at Northeast Factory Direct. If you're sick and tired of your outdated kitchen, it's the perfect time to upgrade to a new modern design. At Northeast Factory Direct, cabinets include all of the upgrades: solid wood, full extension drawer glides, cushion closed drawers, and doors. And the best part, the process is simple. Make an appointment, bring in some basic measurements, and a kitchen designer is going to walk you through the design on an interactive big screen. You can see how it's all going to look. Appointments and design are free. There's no obligation. They'll let you take it with you, in fact. They also have 0% financing available. So if you're thinking about remodeling your kitchen, go to northeastfactorydirect.com and schedule your appointment today. So here is where we sit. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. You got to get to 53. A lot of work from 80 to 53. We talked last week about how 5 positions, 10 guys. Maybe that's it. Maybe that number's lower. Maybe it's higher. My guess is they have most of it ironed out by now. But you have some real philosophical decisions on what to do here in terms of versatility. And that's where this could get interesting, my friend.
It's going to come down to, I think, a great deal of special teams talk. And, you know, what you do is we already talked about on the defensive line. I think those are very difficult decisions, what you do there. Cameron Malveaux last night was a one-man wrecking crew. Now, granted, he had a lot of help, and it was later in the game, but he had a sack in each half. So he had a sack early in the game, sack late, 7 pressures, drew a holding penalty. He played like a man possessed.
Yeah.
I was great to see. He was fired up during the game, and I can tell you he was fired up after the game. He could not have been happier about what he put out there, because for a guy like Cameron Malveaux, that's his resume for everybody in the league to watch. And it's national. It is a national TV game. That was the last preseason game.
Yep.
So let's go to running back. Now, here's something that I don't even know is feasible, but it feels like the fullback's on the field less and less. Is that a spot that we're 100% sure you need a fullback? Something to think about, right? D'Ernest.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think D'Ernest Johnson is a tremendous asset to this organization on the field as a running back, special teams. He can run it. He can catch it. He can pass protect for you. He is trustworthy. He does it all. I love D'Ernest Johnson. Kadarius Hodge is another great core special teams guy. Elijah Lee is a core special teams guy. When you think about the fact that Tavier Thomas, Tay Davis, 2 of your core special teams guys from a year ago are now on the Houston Texans, who you'll see in week 2. There's been a lot of turnover in that unit for Mike Prefer. Now you've gotten some young guys in. The decisions about Jacob Phillips and his stats, it feels like he'll be on the 53 at linebacker. I think they're fascinating decisions at linebacker. Tony Fields isn't a name that we've talked about, but they did draft him in the 6th round. Do they feel that he's a guy that could get through? I'm sorry, in the 5th round. Is he a guy that could get through to the practice squad with nobody seeing him at all? I mean, he's participated, 2 days at training camp?
Right.
Or is that a roster spot that he's going to take? Again, I don't know the answer. Safety, Sheldrick Redwine's another core special teams guy. Richard LeCount, I think, has put himself on this team.
Agreed. And especially with the injury stuff that we have at safety, I think you have to have him in the mix.
Where does MJ Stewart stand? Again, MJ Stewart has that nickel versatility, came up with picks in big games last year, week 17 and in the playoffs, win over the Steelers. He's a core special teams guy.
Right.
So there are some questions out there. There are things that perhaps we're not thinking about, which would be the fullback. I think 3 tight ends. I thought Jordan Franks played very well last night, and I can tell you the coaches took notice of the fact that he was the one who sprinted down after that interception and knocked the football out. That was a big-time play. But Jordan Franks, I feel like, is somebody that could end up on our practice squad and be elevated at a moment's notice if you needed him. But I thought he helped himself in his candidacy to make this roster yesterday, or to be in the program. Let's call it that. Because there are 2 ways to look at it. Who helped themselves to stay in the program versus the 53?
Yeah. Let's play the numbers game real quickly here.
Okay.
So if you got 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 1 fullback.
So how are you counting Felton?
Felton, he's either going to be the third. Let's just take the names out of it. I understand that that's hard to do.
Okay.
But let's say either Felton counts as the 3rd running back or Felton counts as the 6th receiver.
Okay.
Either way, if he's the sixth receiver, then Dearness Johnson's the third running back, and you got an interesting conversation ahead as the last receiver out of the mix there. 3 tight ends?
So you said 1 fullback. So just call it 4 running backs. You're calling a fullback as well?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I think you'll go with 3 tight ends at this point.
Agree.
6
and
receivers.
9 offensive linemen.
You could go 10, but let's say 9. So that would put
That gets you to 24.
Right, which now gives you 26 spots on D, which you'll hear why that could potentially be helpful. So up front, let's call it 9.
You're going 9 D linemen?
Yeah. Right now. Okay. I think you'll go 6. I think it's 9 and 6 or 8 and 7 between D-line and linebacker.
15 total. Fair.
Yes. And then
I think you have it right at 9 and 6.
And that gives you –
because otherwise you don't have anybody to play special teams, because the receivers we're keeping aren't – in many instances, they're not special teams. They're not gunners.
So you think it's right with 7 being the linebackers, an extra linebacker? And remember, one of those spots, that spot, Phillips is going to come out and I would imagine be replaced. Now, you can do this with – if you need a spot on the offensive line, you could do it with Chris Hubbard. For example, let's say you needed to get Michael Dunn if his back injury is more significant than we know, and you need to get him to IR with the chance to return. You could do that cut and bring back with Chris Hubbard on the offensive line. You can do it with Malcolm Smith in the linebacker room. You could do it with Sheldon Day, if need be, in the defensive line room. But if Tony Fields is going to make this team as well, a guy who's not at this moment, it would appear ready to play, and Phillips, that means
you got to be 7.
You got to be 7, but it also means you've got to cut Malcolm Smith and Elijah Lee, both.
Yeah.
Which is scary because your other 5 are Walker, JOK, Mack, Taki, Phillips. Who am I missing? Oh, no, so you could keep one of them. Phillips, Fields would be 6, and you could keep Lee or Smith there. And then that would leave you, if you had 24 in offense, 11 in the DB room, which gives you a spot to keep 5 safeties and 6 corners. So that could give MJ Stewart and Sheldrick Redwine an opportunity to be on the 53.
That's, as we sit here now, that would be my guess. 24 and 26. Now, when you do this, though, and now you see, we did this without assigning human names to it. Now you go assign human names to the 6 receivers.
The 9 linemen, too, because we don't know the status of Michael Dunn. And, for example, if Michael Dunn is hurt, do you keep Blake Hance? Drew Forbes, unfortunately, went down. Greg Senat's been one of the top-graded tackles in the entire NFL in the preseason. He's allowed 1 pressure on 66 pass-blocking snaps and is the number 1 run-blocking tackle in the entire league in the preseason.
Right.
Is he somebody that the Browns, and that's per Pro Football Focus, is he somebody that the Browns want to keep in the program? Because
the hard number game here is right now as we have it, 9 O-line, 9 D-line. Those aren't special teams.
No. From a blocking standpoint, sure, on kick, field goal, but that's it, right? They're
kick
not
return,
coverage.
Kick coverage, punt return.
No.
That's not that. This isn't that.
No, you're going to need your safeties to do it. You're going to need your corners to do it. You're going to need your
corners, your safeties, your receivers, and linebackers and running backs. That's what they got to. Someone's got to do those jobs.
Right, and it's tough. And here's the thing. I think after watching James Hudson the last couple of weeks, some people are saying, "Oh, well, do we need? You need Chris Hubbard." Because I don't know if right now, if you had to, and look, in games perhaps sometimes it gets better in the regular season, but Hudson's doing both sides. They're throwing a lot at him, and he's had some really good moments, but he's also had some struggles out there.
Sure.
And has been beaten a few times in pass pro. So I think it is going to be very difficult, and I think it's going to come down to, in many cases, like, does Tony Fields – do we think he can be a core special teams guy, and are we willing to take that gamble over an Elijah Lee?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to make room for Kadarius and or Dearness or both because of what they bring from special teams? And in Dearness' case, I think Dearness is valuable, period.
You've made this case last week, and I think it's a correct one.
And he makes it every time he plays.
He makes it every time he plays, that if something were to happen to Chubb or Hunt, he can come in there. He's trusted. What he is, and he's really good. So I think he could start for some teams in the league. So, I'd hate to see him go, let alone what he does special teams. But it allows you to stay what you're doing offensively. So it's tough. It's going to be tough. This is going to be very tough. These conversations are taking place, and you have to feel like versatility is going to play a role in this. What can you do other than what you do? So, we talk about 18 guys, D-line, O-line. Those are not core special team guys, kick return, kick coverage, those type of things. So if you are one of those 90 linemen, can you bounce outside from time to time? And if you can, then there's value there.
Yep.
You talked about Sheldon Day. We talked about Malik McDowell. So there's versatility there. If you're one of these guys like Hub, geez, you got to have Hub.
Yeah.
He can do everything.
He started for you at tackle last year. He started for you at guard last year. Guy who started
to have those guys.
50 games in this division. So
right. Yeah. You have to. We're too good. You said this before we got on the air. We're too good to risk stuff like over that. We have to protect against injury. We're one of 3 teams, in my opinion, in the AFC that can win the Super Bowl. So you can't not have all of the bases covered here. And these bases will have to be covered, deciding what is the answer to get that done by tomorrow at 4.
Right. And I think things will start to perhaps trickle out in advance. I think some of the decisions that are hard are incredibly hard. Yep. That final, let's say that, the last 5 in, first 5 out, that's going to be very hard. Getting down from 80 to 58, we'll call it, is not going to be hard.
No.
And then we have one other thing to discuss, which we haven't even got to in terms of, how difficult various decisions are. Chase McLaughlin was sailing along.
I know.
And that last extra point, it just makes you say, because in some ways, that was a high-pressure kick. And the reason that I say that is if he makes that, there's no discussion. Almost put it through from 56, right on the crossbar, good leg, right down the middle.
Yep. First extra point was
I heard it was a little close.
Inside.
I couldn't see it from our sideline vantage point.
It was about a foot inside the right post. It was narrow.
Okay. So, and then the last one was not close.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. If that were the first extra point of the preseason, and then he went through and did everything else in the preseason, followed it, I think you feel much better about it. It's unfortunate because that is not, again, we are too good, and good games come down to a kick here, a kick there. We've seen it all too often in the past when we were on the wrong side of those kicks, how painful that can be. I don't know who is out there. I don't know what the opportunities are, but I would imagine that the Browns are exploring them at least, and you have an opportunity between now. You have 2 weeks to at least hold some type of a competition and get guys in here.
Yep, I would agree with that. You'll hear from Coach. You'll hear from Six. We'll hand out some game balls coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. right, Beau Bishop here from my friends at Raising Cane's. School is in session. Raising Cane's ready to teach your taste buds a lesson. Time to feed your brain with hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers, crispy crinkle-cut fries, buttery Texas toast, and mouth-watering cane sauce from Raising Cane's. Raising Cane's is here to help all school year long, too. Visit canesandcommunity.com. Learn more about how Cane's can support your school with fundraisers, sponsorships, and more. Raising Cane's, one love. The preseason is over. 3-0 is the record. It ended with Baker Mayfield getting a little bit of run, which was fun to see. Let's start with Coach on Baker and the first-team offense and his impressions.
Yeah, I thought that first group did a nice job, Dan.
Just 20 seconds, but you guys are down.
The whole time, but I thought that they were mostly assignment sound, and I thought Baker was sharp. He was really sharp through warm-ups. Even he was very excited to play.
You could certainly see that in the performance, that it was, I think in a way this is kind of a reward for Six.
Yes.
Hey, go out there and have a little fun, buddy.
And he did.
He did. Yeah, he had a lot of fun. It was fun seeing him do the air guitar and all of that. Here is Baker on Chris, let's play the one where he talks about being ready for the regular season.
I know our guys are ready. They've been itching to go, and we can feel that, how close it is, and just all that preparation you put in throughout the off season ever since we lost to the Chiefs in January. That we've been working for this point right now, and I think our guys are ready to go. So a few more things to clean up. Obviously, this is the worst part about this business is the cuts that we have to make, and unfortunately, it sucks. We have a good group, so. It's hard.
You're up.
He, as impressive on the field as off it. He did basically what amounted to a press conference with Michelle Tafoya yesterday while you guys were doing the broadcast. I mean, she must have asked him 10 questions.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was like, 5 plays. She just kept talking to him on a wide array of issues, and even the ones that, they played the hits, you and Odell and all of that. And by the way, Collinsworth had an incredible takedown of the notion of Odell and Baker and it not being a good idea that they're out there. He said, I watched every pass play of the Browns last year. Odell Beckham on plays that were not called for him was hustling his butt off.
Yep.
The notion that they're better offensively, he called it, I believe, malarkey was the word he used to describe the notion that we're better off.
For Collinsworth, that's pretty strong. No, I think that you are
pretty strong
right.
Takedown.
And no, listen, we know how absurd the notion is.
He handled all of that and it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of questions. It was really good, but it was a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. Usually those are 3 and outs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this was like 8.
And and I saw Miles even did an interview.
Miles was closer to 3 and out. 3 or 4, but 6 was a little mini presser. Is what happened there. We have spoken about getting this down to 53 and the challenges of it. Coach Stefanski was asked about it yesterday after the game on getting this roster down to 53.
I would just tell you, Nate, with everybody it matters. That's certainly something that we keep in mind for all these moves. Like I said before, I'd love to keep everybody. I don't think they're going to relax the roster rules just for me, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Yep.
So that's it, and that has to be done here now. And we kind of went through our numbers. We'll have Gribbs on here in about 10, 12 minutes and get his thoughts on kind of the positional breakdown and see if that matches up with his thinking. But that's the work that's being done right now. I should mention, Coach is talking today at 3, right? Do I have that right?
You do.
He's available today at 3. Yeah, that's a sweet spot there. So he'll be available at 3 today, and you'll get some things, but probably the majority of things will happen tomorrow.
I would think so. I mean, there could be things that trickle out as information gets relayed to players and or their agents, and I think things will come out. You're starting to see some come in from around the league in terms of some of the early releases that are happening, and then we'll go from there, obviously, with the Browns. But I think we'll get some information today.
Yeah, and you're trying to always, if you can help people and release them early so they can find another landing spot, you want to do that for people if you can.
Especially for veterans.
Veterans, yeah. So you'll see how that goes. All right, let's hand out some game balls from Monday. Dr. Z, your offensive game ball, my friend, from yesterday.
I'm going to give it to Davion Davis. Davion Davis led the team in receiving in each of the first 2 games. He was 1 yard shy of leading the team in receiving this week. He made that incredible third down catch on the sideline where the ball was barely off the ground. He's just got strong hands, and then the touchdown catch going up over the defender. Similar, not quite the degree of difficulty of Nick Chubb a couple of years ago down in Cincinnati where he caught the ball kind of around the fender. But Davion Davis just keeps making plays. And, again, he will be suspended for the first 2 games of the season for an incident that happened while he was in Minnesota. The Browns were aware of this. I think he is a tremendous candidate to end up on our practice squad after those 2 weeks because at that point it's a little bit tougher for people to claim, guys 2 weeks into the season. Not impossible, certainly. And he definitely has made an impression. But I'll give him the offensive MVP. Baker was great, he was everything that you wanted to see out of him. But Davis, just his whole body of work, and it continued with that touchdown catch there.
I think that's probably the right one. I would also say Kadero with a great catch. I mean, that's just a sweet catch on that play. That was cool. Demetric Felton flashes every opportunity. The idea that in 6th round in back-to-back years you get Donovan Peoples-Jones and Demetric Felton is pretty amazing. I loved seeing Dearness run the ball and have the impact he had. We've got good players, guys.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot of good players and not a home for everybody. Defensively, your game ball.
I'll give it to those 2 young tackles, Malik McDowell and Jordan Elliott. They can split it. They were just dominant, and I don't think anybody's helped themselves more than Malik McDowell on the defensive side of the ball.
It's a sack lunch is what it is. I mean, it's the Wedding Crashers sack lunch. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he's done the last 2 games and the attention that he draws, and worthy. This is a guy who is a first-round talent, and he's playing like it, quite frankly.
Yes.
Special teams, game ball?
I'll give it to Demetric Felton. 11-yard punt return, 37-yard kickoff return, made that great move on the kick, and I think that's what they wanted to see. Can somebody give us a little bit of juice here in this return game? And I think he did that. He had that great run as well where he reversed field right after that, and then I think he kind of ran out of gas. That was a lot on one drive. You had the big kick return and then the big run, because there was a play near the goal line where it looked initially like he might be able to get to the corner, and he just wasn't able to quite get there. But Demetric Felton, I thought from a special team standpoint, it's likely to me that he's going to be the opening kick returner.
Certainly would seem that way. And you don't think about that from the standpoint of the fatigue of all that he has done this camp. You think about how many plays that he has run as a rookie compared to what he was doing at UCLA and what this camp has been like. And it's a lot. I mean, he's returning everything. He's in on offense. He's in on all of this as you're resting ones, and ones aren't getting the run that as appropriately. And he's picking up a lot of that slack, and he looks like a diamond, man. I mean, he really does. He adds something. There was that play where they put him in motion and he circled around Demetric Felton. That was action we didn't see last year, so that's a little different action than what we've seen.
So when we had Felton and Dearness in the game together, we did a jet and then a screen back to the other side, which is something we didn't see in our arsenal last year. And then they call that an orbit motion, where you come across and then orbit around the quarterback and go back to the other side. You know who does that all the time? The Kansas City Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs.
We were showing the Chiefs some of their stuff, and also I think making them prepare for some things. I think there wasn't anything that was put out there in this game that wasn't purposeful. You wanted to see a vertical to Anthony Schwartz so that they're thinking about that. You wanted to show them that orbit motion.
How many Ps do we have?
So they're thinking about that. Huh? How many Ps?
How many Ps do we have
4.
now? Are we to 4 or 5?
4.
Because purposeful could almost be a 5th P.
I think it's under advisement. Mount Rushmore's got 4 heads, but if you need to get a 5th up there, maybe we will.
Yeah. Well, there have been people who have tried to get a 5th head on Mount Rushmore, and maybe we ought to try and get that.
So far,
that 5th
unsuccessful.
head on the Ps.
Yeah.
Unsuccessful at this point. Purposeful, though. Yeah, nothing here is done on accident. Nothing is done on accident.
No. It was purposeful.
Yeah, it's all. Yeah, that was good. I found it entertaining.
People could take umbrage and say that it's part of having the preparation, the plan.
Is it semantics?
Yeah, the process to implement the plan. Our plan was to show them something.
Could be.
And, so of course we were purposeful in there. The poise is on its own. I mean, on its own merits. It's
on its own.
Yeah, very, very nice.
Certainly is. One man always has a lot of poise when he's on this program. It's the great Sir Andrew Gribble. He joins us coming up next with his. We'll go through these numbers with him, see where he sits on this breakdown to 53. That is coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Second hour here, Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop, Nathan Zegura. Beau Bishop here for my friends at EOX Vantage. Local presence, global footprint, trusted by some of the world's biggest brands. Going to read this testimonial from an EOX Vantage client, Tom Daugherty, who's the Senior Vice President of Specialty Programming, NIP Group. He says, quote, "I have a saying about working with EOX Vantage. If you dream it, they can build it. We generate lots of ideas for them to carry out, and they've implemented everything we've come up with. We brainstorm ways to innovate and improve our company. We use EOX Vantage for their infrastructure, coding, and programming capabilities, technological expertise, and experience working with global brands. We're absolutely thrilled with our partnership, and you can be too. Learn more about EOX Vantage by visiting www.eoxvantage.com for more." And with that, we head on the hotline for a visit with our good buddy, Sir Andrew Gribble, Brown Senior Staff Writer. Gribbs, thanks for the time, bud. Z and I were going through this just from a numbers standpoint on this cut down that'll have to take place between now and, well, really yesterday and tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And we kind of settled on 24 offense, 26 defense is kind of where we ended up. In your mind, where do you kind of sit on the breakdown of this?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think that both sides of the ball have a players or two who you don't know if they're going to be ready for week one. And then that kind of factors into the ultimate math that you're doing. But I guess I have the toughest – I think I agree with you guys, though. If I'm shading one side or more to have more people, I'm going to go with the defense because I think, one, you want to be as versatile as possible. And I think that Joe Woods has indicated he could have one defense week one look completely different from the defense they use week three. And I think part of that is having players that can play multiple spots, but also that is also having more players. And I think that could be a potential thing there. And then with the offense, you're looking at a group that's really stable and coming back in full form. And I think the one position that you're looking at, potentially tight end, is that a group that is smaller this year because of Stephen Carlson's injury last year? That's really the only place where it's a little different. Everything else might be pretty similar, but I think I agree with you guys. I guess I'm probably leaning a little heavier on the defense just because I think there's some intriguing options at defensive tackle and because of what you have to do injury-wise on that side of the ball as well.
Let's just start with one of the rooms that I think is on the defensive side that might be the most difficult to figure out at this point, especially in light of the way that Malik McDowell just continues to destroy people. I mean, literally, he does things in NFL. I grant it's preseason, but he's doing things in games that you see at high school, and you're like, oh yeah, that guy that just ragdolled that other guy, he's gonna be, he's a 5-star prospect. You don't see that often on an NFL field, that kind of just annihilation. What do you think in the defensive line room? How do you see that shaking out both at end and tackle?
That's just tricky. I mean, I think because, I think that many people, probably rightfully so, viewed Malik McDowell as a long shot going into this. But, you can't unsee what we've seen these last couple of games. I think that's a player that belongs, and he's someone that has kind of risen into the conversation and someone that you really can't let go because other teams have now seen what he's been able to do on the field as well. So he's someone that's certainly in the conversation. And I think players such as Sheldon Day we might have written off going into this training camp, and he's been exceptional. I think he's shown up in all these preseason games and has been a really solid player in the middle of that defensive line group. And then you throw in the fact Tommy Togi has a 4th-round pick. Jordan Elliott was a 3rd-round pick last year. I agree with you. That's the toughest room to really peg, especially when Malik Jackson, Andrew Billings, it seem like your two main guys at that spot. So I have a really tough time getting down to 5, which I think usually is higher than what you would usually keep, especially on a defense like this. But that's definitely a tricky area and one where I really won't be confident in my picks at that spot until we actually see them. I mean, I think that it's been a kind of a combination of really, you don't really see a ton on the practice field when it comes to defensive tackles, and then when it comes to the game action, all of these guys have seemingly had their moments. So it seems like the plan has worked with attacking that position with numbers. Now it's just going to be really tough to subtract from those numbers. I think that, and that's a position where we saw it last year when the Browns claimed Vincent Taylor. That's a position where the guys you cut odds are they're probably going to land somewhere else the next day.
Absolutely. And so Nathan and I we were at 9 between D tackle and D end. Is that a number that you feel?
I do.
Confident?
Yeah, I think so, because, and it's weird because you would have gone into this maybe into training camp thinking it might be 5 D ends, 4 D tackles, and now I'm kind of the reverse. And I think that it's just tricky beyond what you have beyond Miles and Jadeveon. Is it going to be Porter Gustin? Is it going to be Cameron Malveaux, who really came on strong at the end? Joe Jackson had a really good preseason. And then they like the upside of Curtis Weaver. I mean, those are players that it really beyond those top two, which those top two are really good. I'm not so certain on what the pecking order is behind that, because I don't know if we got like a clear-cut look throughout the preseason, and you throw in the injury that Porter Gustin was dealing with as well that kept him on the sidelines for a few days. I mean, that's a tough group, and one that you'll see around the league. I mean, again, pass rushers are at a premium, so it's not like there's going to be some surplus of talented or ready-made pass rushers that hit the waiver wire. You're probably going to roll with what you got, and it'll be interesting to see how they view those skill sets. And maybe it really does come down to skill sets and how they fit within the defensive line behind those top two guys. And again, whole defensive line, the starters, I'm locked in. I feel good about those guys. Everyone else behind that, it seems a little bit unclear to me at this point.
2 questions, kind of keeping in this room, because I think this discussion's a fascinating one. Did you make anything, number one, of Sheldon Day playing defensive end a lot in the second half last night and actually being quite successful at it?
You know, I don't know. I wonder if it might have come down to a numbers thing. I mean, you were playing, you weren't playing Miles and Clowney, so those are 2 guys that aren't in there. And I think that defensive end room isn't as deep as maybe those other spots. And I think that it was a combination of maybe getting a different look for Sheldon Day and also giving some more opportunities to those other defensive tackles, because I think this was a high volume kind of game for Tommy Togiai. And Sheldon also played a ton of defensive tackle too. He was active throughout that game. So yeah, I mean, we remember a couple of years ago we saw another Sheldon playing defensive end when we didn't expect him to. So you might reach some circumstances in the season. Heaven forbid you get hit hard by injuries or something else. You might need some flexibility. We saw Sheldon Richardson do it pretty well, and I guess we'll see how Sheldon Day graded out at defensive end after last.
So that was one, and then the other was, at that defensive end group, I wonder how they view the fact that nobody really separated them. Malveaux had the best game 3. Jackson probably had the best games 1 and 2 if you combine them. Gustin was the guy who was on the roster a year ago, but nobody really seemed to emerge and say, I'm that guy that is the 4th defensive end behind Tack McKinley. And I got a chance to talk with Tack yesterday. So happy to be back. Clearly, the teammates like him a lot. I could say that on the bus as I rode them. So I think your top 3 you feel real good about, and then it's just what's going on after that at number 4.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was just a mixed bag of who was going to emerge as that pass rusher, kind of that 4th pass rusher spot goes. And do you want someone who maybe has a different skill set from Tack McKinley, or you want someone maybe the bigger, more sturdier end at that spot? Is that the way you want to go? Or as Kevin Stefanski talks about, you use the whole picture, dating back all the way through the off-season workout program, OTAs, mandatory minicamp. It's the entire body of work where you don't let one preseason game that was great overwhelm all the other stuff that maybe wasn't so great. So this was one of those maybe kind of full picture looks at that spot, and then potentially you get your group together, and then you see what happens on the waiver wire the next day and evaluate it. Is this the group you want to go with moving forward? So it's a tricky one, and the Browns are not unique in this spot. I imagine there's a lot of teams that aren't maybe you wonder who your 4th pass rushers on a lot of teams around the league. I mean, this is a tough group to fill. The Browns just have to feel fortunate that they've got probably the best guy at number 1 and a really good number 2 in Jadeveon Clowney as well.
Oh, to be abundantly clear, these are first world problems, Gribbs.
Oh yes,
this is not 2016. Like this is good. Things are good. These are very good problems, and I think when you talk about first world problems, if you flip it to the offense, and I want to get back to Tony Fields and get something with you on that too. But when you flip to the offense, you see Dearness Johnson last night, and we saw him last year in Dallas, and we know what he's capable of. You think about Cordell Hodge, who wasn't he the third receiver last year to start the season?
Yes.
And as a core special teams guy, makes a great catch last night. Felton's making this team. But is there room for all these guys? There can't be.
It's tough, and it's a surplus of kind of playmakers at those spots, and that's what happens when you have two starting running backs. I mean, two of the top 10 running backs in the league on your own team. I mean, that's what makes this even trickier. And when you have two of the best wide receivers in the league on your team, and you strike gold in the 6th round with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then you're just wondering, like, well, how do you fit all these guys on the team? I mean, Dearness Johnson just continues to deliver. I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at depth charts of every running back group in the NFL, but I imagine this guy's your number 2 at least on most of the teams in the league, and potentially a number 1 for some other teams. You know, I think that he's so good at both. It's like he's the nice mix of he can be a power runner, he can catch passes, and then of course he plays so well on special teams. I mean, it's the perfect total package you want out of a player at running back 3. But he's someone who, if Hunt goes down for an extended period of time, I think you feel good as him being your number 2 guy. And I think that he's continued to get better and better. And really, this is some unprecedented stability in a position group that the Browns have had with this running backs room. And it'll be interesting to see if you bring this group back again for a 3rd consecutive year. But Dearness Johnson really has done all the right things. Cordell Hodge has done all the right things. I mean, these are tough decisions that get trickier when you have other guys like a Donovan Peoples-Jones play well. You draft Anthony Schwartz. I mean, you're adding more players to the mix that make these decisions even trickier.
You're right, and I certainly think that Dearness Johnson's done everything you want. I think Dearness and Kadarius, for example, if the Browns cannot find room for them, they will be on rosters in the NFL. I certainly hope they are playing for the Cleveland Browns, though, going forward. And big fan of both of those guys and what they bring, not only as players but special teams and in the locker room. Both are very, very well liked. I want to go back defensively really quickly and talk about the linebacker room, because you've got some interesting circumstances there. Jacob Phillips is going to take a spot on that initial 53, at least as of now you would feel that way, because he has not been placed on injured reserve. That would allow him to be there for 24 hours to be on that injured reserve to return. And then Tony Fields is back. We have not seen him at all, but they did draft him this year. And you add those two to Elijah Lee and to Malcolm Smith and to Mack and to Taki and to JOK and to Anthony Walker, and that's a lot of linebackers.
Yeah, and it's a lot of linebackers, but then you go into the season thinking you don't have 2 of them, like you just mentioned. So then it's all of a sudden not a lot of linebackers. So it's a tricky balance that's going to make the decisions of the next 24 hours when your deadline is. It might extend 48 hours. I mean, this is a tricky balance that they have to strike, and you feel good again about who the players are that you're going to be putting out there against the Chiefs. You feel good about Mack. You feel good maybe about Taki getting back in there. You feel good about Anthony Walker. We can't wait to see JLK. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you feel good about, but it's those back end guys and filling out the rest of the room, and maybe having to take risks on if they're exposed for 24 hours to other teams, or maybe how you make it work with the math. I mean, that the IR thing is a confusing thing for fans, I know, but it's pretty clear cut. I mean, you put them on IR before 4:00 on Tuesday, they're out for the year. And so that gives you no flexibility. But then that 24 hours, that's when you can start making moves and getting the IR designated to return. I mean, that's why you look at some of these guys where you're projecting them to be on the IR designated return in about 24 hours. Then that opens up a few more spots. So it's one of those things where you're going to see these names hit the list of players that are no longer on the team, but then you've got to realize that there could be some guys that could be on their way back. I mean, we'll see how it goes. But it's just an ever-changing 24 hours. And, you know, the Browns, this is, again, a good problem to have, not at the top of the waiver wire order priority list like they were in the years past. So this is it gets even a little trickier when you know so many teams are ahead of you in that pecking order.
And Gribbs, you mentioned confusing, and I think it is. It's confusing for me sometimes. Z brought this up, and we were talking about it last week with what we did with Greg Robinson a couple of years ago, where I remember going, wait a second, we cut Greg Robinson. He's going to start at left tackle.
Yeah.
Well, we did, but then he was coming right back, and that had to kind of be explained. And we have some candidates for that this year where that same thing you could do, and it's hard for fans to understand, but that's the reality of this business. There's some risk. You all have to be on the same page. But what do we end up with, Z? 2 or 3 instances where we could do that, where there are players where we could do that?
Yeah, it just depends on, on the offensive line, for example, and Gribbs, I don't know if you have any more insight in this. We really just don't know how bad the Michael Dunn injury is. And he's a guy that did not participate last night due to that back injury. So is he somebody that you would need a spot on the offensive line, let's say, to put on short-term IR? It's not a season-ending thing, but you might need him to come back. So Chris Hubbard, it has to be a vested veteran. It has to be somebody who's in 5 years in the league. So Chris Hubbard, you could do that on the offensive line. Again, the positions don't necessarily have to match up, but Chris Hubbard, you could do that if we were to say that Michael Dunn needed to go on your short-term IR. Malcolm Smith would be somebody that you could do that with at linebacker if you needed for Jacob Phillips, we know, to go on that short-term IR. So there are some candidates. Sheldon Day would be another candidate as the defensive lineman because of his status as a vested veteran. So there are some candidates. It's, again, easier said than done. It doesn't happen all that much, although we have sad the experience of it here to get Drew Forbes to the IR in years past. But I do think that that's a tool that is at the disposal of general manager Andrew Berry, and Gribbs not sure if he'll use it or not, but that would be a way to get to keep basically 55, but call it 53.
Yeah, it's tricky because you don't have. I mean, this is still as ready as this team is to compete and contend for a Super Bowl. This is still a really young team, so you don't have a ton of these guys that qualify as those vested veterans. I mean, you've got a lot of guys that would be if you cut them get sent to the waiver wire, and so that's what makes this tricky. And again, you don't see it happen very often. But I do wonder if now you start to see it happen more and more around the league. You wonder if that Greg Robinson move a couple years ago was kind of a trend-setting moment, almost like the Brock Osweiler moment of a couple years ago, where teams start to do these things and realize what you can do. It's just a lot of roster manipulation, and it's one of those where I'm confident, as we've seen already with this group, that they've clearly probably thought through every scenario possible on how to maximize this 53. But again, it's like the Browns have, I think, done a good job of avoiding the injury bug, and I think that was pretty clear with how camp was operated, how they operated the preseason. It's just they've got this like surplus of like in betweenish injuries where you don't know how long these guys are going to be out, and that's what makes these decisions a little less clear cut than we might have thought they were a couple weeks ago.
I'd like to ask you about the kicker situation because it felt like things were going along smoothly. A little snuck one through one of the early kicks in the game, but a beautiful kick from 56 that just hit the crossbar. And you're saying, okay, he's made every kick. You don't expect him to make the 56, but he hit it straight, hits the crossbar. And then for Chase McLaughlin, you miss that final extra point wide right, and not the prettiest kick. And all of a sudden now it feels like, oh boy, what do we do? What was kind of your read on that, and what do you make of that kicking situation in light of that?
I mean, I felt the same way as you. I felt the same way as you did. I think someone pointed out this on Twitter last night. Was like, did Chase McLaughlin just win the competition with a miss? Because that was an impressive miss on the 56-yarder. I mean, I thought that was going in, and it just was short, and it would have been good from 55. But yeah, you don't want to see missed extra points, and it was kind of an ugly missed extra point. And then the tricky thing with this is, and we're talking about getting all these final roster spots, is do you even have the room over the next 10 days to have 2 kickers on your roster for a competition? Like, that's where it can get tough. I mean,
you'd have to bring one on the practice squad, right?
Yeah, practice squad. Yeah, I mean, that's where it can get tricky, but there are going to be some kickers that hit the market. Clearly, these guys have probably worked out a bunch of them because these kickers just kind of cycle around the league. So there's probably a lot of knowledge on where they're at. But clearly, Chase McLaughlin, if people forget, this is someone obviously the Browns coveted because he was claimed via waivers. It wasn't just a random signing of free agency. So he was claimed. So this is someone that clearly they eyed very, very well to add some competition in that room back in April when they claimed him. So it's just a matter of who ultimately becomes available, where they are on kind of the internal pecking order, and how you operate that. Can you get a kicker to come to your practice squad to compete, or are you going to have to give a roster spot? That's tough. And I think that I don't know if this entire kicking competition is a huge decision is going to be based on one extra point that went wayward. It's just something that, as the last thing you didn't want to see,
Yeah.
and so it's tough.
Right.
And it's just that's what makes this. I don't know. I don't know if my answer about this kicking competition would be any different had he made the extra point. I don't think it would be. I think I'd be saying the same things, is that this thing's not over, and that we've heard as much from Stefanski, Mike Prefer. I don't think Stefanski would have declared it over last night if he had made the extra point, or even the 56-yard field goal, for that matter. So I think it largely, honestly, depends on who hits the wire over the next 48 hours in this kicking competition.
I don't think it would have been over, but I think he could have been. You're at least writing it in a fine number 2 lead pencil. Maybe not full Sharpie yet, but there.
No, not
now
Sharpie,
you're like,
number 2.
I'm looking for a writing implement. Not sure I can find one.
It does seem that way. Gribbs, great stuff, buddy. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
All right, that is our senior staff writer, Sir Andrew Gribble, joining us on the hotline there. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for a clear answer as to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today for more. Coming up next, we go around the league, and there's a lot to go around. We hit it next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for Raising Cane's. School is in session, and Raising Cane's is ready to teach your taste buds a lesson. It's time to feed your brain with hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers, crispy, crinkle-cut fries, buttery Texas toast, and mouth-watering cane sauce from Raising Cane's. Raising Cane's is here to help all school year long. Visit canesandcommunity.com to learn more about how Cane's can support your school with fundraisers, sponsorships, and more. Raising Cane's, one love. Let's go around the league, and there is a lot going on around the league. Let's start here for in terms of has the biggest impact for us as a competitor in this division, and certainly someone we know very well as an Ohio State Buckeye who was very good, and that is J.K. Dobbins, out for the year with the torn ACL. This happened on Saturday, and this is a massive, massive loss for them. Anybody you read about anybody who's been over there and the plans for how they were going to go about their business with him and Edwards and Lamar, and now he's out of it, and he was ready. I think he was ready to explode. I think he was a very, very solid fantasy pick as well, let alone the personal side of it. And this is a big blow for Baltimore. And I saw John Harbaugh today defending the decision to play him. One of those things where you never know when a guy's going to get hurt. Felt like you needed to play him. They did, and the ACL happens.
Yeah, it's a huge blow to them. Unfortunately, they made an investment into Gus Edwards, and they've still got him in tow, but he does not bring the wiggle that a J.K. Dobbins does. Great power back, and it's a significant blow to their offense. And Todd Gurley is washed. Gus Edwards is better than Todd Gurley. I mean, without question, Todd Gurley is a limited athlete at this point, and it's unfortunate to see his demise, but he is.
He's 26.
27, I think. Yeah, 26, 27.
Is
Not
he
old.
now 20? He's young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just whatever
He's
happened
young.
to his knee that year with the Rams zapped him of whatever made him Todd Gurley.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure he tore his knee at Georgia too. So it was a couple. But yeah, that's not the answer. That's not going to help them with what they need to do. So huge blow, though, in terms of what they were going to try to do, and there isn't anybody that they're going to be able to get that's going to be able to give them what J.K. Dobbins would have been able to get them. Other news out of the weekend, you guys were in transit. I'm sure you kept an eye on it, though, and Gibby, certainly as the weather nerd that he is, probably kept an eye on it with the Hurricane Ida down there.
Yeah.
And the devastation that created. The Saints are in Dallas practicing this week. Sean Payton has said that they will not be back, and you do have to wonder if they'll be able to host the Packers in Week 1. That's the least of their problems down there. They got a whole city without power. But that, I'll tell you, I love it there. I love going there to visit. I don't know how you could live there. I don't. I just can't imagine living in a world where on a week's notice you got to be able to pack up your entire life, or even 4 days' notice.
It's just wild. It really is an incredible thing how it keeps happening, and you feel so bad for that area. Now, I did see while we were on the air, actually in the last 10 minutes, that there were reports that all the major power lines to New Orleans are in the river, and thus they don't think that they're going to have power for, it said, weeks.
Right.
No water for 5 days, power for weeks in much of New Orleans. I also did see, though, that the Superdome emerged unscathed with no structural damage. So I'm not sure if it's do you have enough generators for a facility like that to keep the power on to run a game?
You can't run a game if your city doesn't have power.
I would think not.
That you could, if you had to play a home game, you go play in Baton Rouge. You can't. You can't play a game. I can't imagine you could. It was an incredible unifier after Katrina, and thank God this does not have the devastation of Katrina. But there is, there was. I didn't see floating in the river. I did not hear that part, but I heard the part about how every power line into the city was compromised, and so there's no power in New Orleans.
Yes.
Geez, and have either of you guys ever been in a hurricane, or been in one?
No.
Have you ever been in one?
Earthquakes, yes. Hurricanes, no. Earthquakes are big.
Yeah,
in
but
Montana.
you've done tornadoes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, earthquakes are huge in Montana. Yellowstone, of course. Earthquake founded.
That's formed.
And you've been part of a tornado, right, Gibbe?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's all terrifying. They're all just terrifying. What you can't believe about a hurricane, the winds, are crazy. But what's the scariest part of them is the water just keeps coming up, and you go, just stop at any point. Like our worst downpour that we get here, imagine that for 12 hours, and you just go, stop, please.
Right.
I mean,
yep.
and when the water breaches your floor, that's when you've crossed the Rubicon, and you go, okay, well, this is now this is a little different level that we're at now, and certainly, our thoughts and prayers with those down there, because that's going to be that's tough. It's just tough, and it just had with 16 years to the day of Katrina. Pretty sure.
Yeah, you are correct.
Pretty sure. Yeah, 16 years to the day. So we'll see on that front. All right, Bill Belichick not going to name a starter.
Okay.
All right, let me run this by you. He knows that they're better with Mac Jones because he's a really smart coach, and you can, if you watch them play, you can tell that they're better with Mac Jones.
Yep.
But Cam Newton is a heck of a force of personality, and I think Belichick respects the heck out of him for what he did for them last year, and just the type of person he is, and the type of player he is, and how, I mean, Cam kind of is in a way, that warrior football guy, the way he put his body in harm's way for all these years, and even for them last year when they were basically running single wing with him.
Yeah.
At times. So I think he's incredibly troubled, and I think that I don't know. I don't know if he'll go with Newton to start, but I think they have to know that they're better with Mac Jones.
I think they are. I also think that maybe the way he does it is kind of takes a page out of Kyle's playbook and says, all right, Mac Jones is going to be our quarterback, but Cam, you're going to score the ball quite a bit, and you're going to be involved in the red area and be an important part of what we do to try to win games.
So Kyle's doing that. It's inverted. He has the veteran, and then he's got Trey Lance, who he's got, that's what he did in the game. And by the way, what a great way to make people think about how do we defend all this.
Get ready for week one, right, yes.
Two different types of what offense are we preparing for, the one with the guy who can run or the one with the guy who can't. But Jones has looked good. Jones has looked very good.
Very good.
Yeah, so interesting to see. The headline, of course, over the weekend is the Deshaun Watson news. Charles Robinson has been all over this and continues to be all over it today. And in fact, you said he challenged Brian Flores to say that they have not talked to Houston about Deshaun Watson. That's how confident he is in his reporting.
Oh, yeah. He said, I challenge them to go on the record and state that they are not pursuing it. They have not called the Houston Texans about trading for Deshaun Watson because they have. And
jeez.
Don't you think it just gets done? If they're interested, if you're the Texans, he won't play for you.
It's just going to be about, if you're Miami, how much there would have to be language that would protect them if he goes to jail.
Yes. Well, that's what they're asking for. They're asking for pick protection in the trade in the event that he is unable to play in the National Football League.
And there should be.
There should be, because if he's out of the league, he has no value to the Texans either.
Correct.
So at least they're getting something.
It's one thing to say, all right, fine, he's going to be probably on the commissioner's list. By the way, he's nothing official at this point. But, all right, he's not going to play this year. I heard somebody over the weekend saying, and it was somebody relatively reputable, saying that they think Watson's going to start week 1 in Miami. Well,
what?
What are we talking about here? This is crazy. But he is not officially shut down. If he was on Miami and Goodell hadn't done anything, he would be eligible to play. Like, he's not playing because he doesn't want to play in Houston.
He's not even allowed to. He has to go onto his own field in Houston.
Right. It's just a bunch of – it's crazy chaos down there. But I think if you're – it's almost like it. All right, so they want 3 1s and 2 2s and like a veteran defensive player is what Houston's looking for in return. That's been the reported give back that they're hoping for. If you're Miami and you can give 80% of that with contingencies on if he can't play or if he has to sit out a year, you do that in a second, don't you?
I would think. It's better than the alternative. And there are reports now coming out that the Texans are willing to trade anybody on their roster, basically, that's a veteran.
Who do they have that has value at this point?
I don't know. One of our listeners, the Bearded Browns fan, said, do we call them about Mr. Fairbairn, who's been a pretty darn good kicker for them?
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think, like, on their roster, they've gutted it to the absolute bolts. I don't know what they have left.
Right. I'm just thinking from our standpoint, I don't know. I mean, other than, do they still have Tunsil down there?
Yeah, I think he might still be there, but that doesn't.
That's it.
That's not.
Bring back
from
the
our
money.
vantage. Right. Yeah, they're start from scratch. They're in the Spencer Rattler derby. They're out of they're ready to push their chips in. Which is tough. We've done that. That's hard to do when you do that. It's tough on fans. It's tough on organizations. It's tough on the guys who remain. But I'd rather they're at a point where, to me, I don't know how you could keep Watson there. I really don't.
The fact that it has happened the way that it has, the fact that there's been nothing from the NFL about it,
nothing
is a lot of things are wild about this situation. I can't believe that we're sitting here today and we don't know what's happening.
It's crazy.
And that we're already talking about he could start that somebody is talking about, not us, but that they expect him to be the week 1 starter in Miami. Well, that would mean it would have to happen like now.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, in order for him to get ready. Beamsy was playing his Madden season with the Browns, and of course, week 2 is Houston. So I'm thinking, okay, piece of cake for you here, Beams. You can take care of this. And then we go to get the kickoff. He's kicking the ball off, and the Texans, we deferred as we tend to like to do.
That's right.
So all right, we'll get it at the half. So Houston gets the ball, and out trouts number 4. And well, who's this? What's this guy doing here? Beams, I'm sorry, I didn't think you'd have to deal with this guy, but he's still there.
Still there,
and he's eligible to play.
And he is tough to deal with.
Yeah.
By the way, the Browns are. If people haven't gotten mad, I did download it over the weekend. The Browns are so fun to play with.
It's never been. It's interesting. I don't know that the Browns have ever been this good on a video game.
No, definitely.
I mean, even go back to Super Tecmo.
But even in Super Tecmo, they weren't one of the top 4 teams that you were going to draft.
No,
now they would be.
No. You go all the way back, for Joe Montana MVP football in the early 90s, all of it. Anything that the Browns were on, this has to be the best video game Browns team of all time by a pretty wide margin. When you play with the Browns on Madden, it was like this a little bit last year, but it's even more so this year. It's almost like there's not enough time to get everybody the amount of touches you want.
No.
It's hard to get the touches. Like I always end up looking back down. I'm like, gosh, Kareem only's got 4 carries. What am I doing? I got to run some stuff out of the gun to get him some run. It's hard. It's hard to get him involved.
And Clowney and Garrett
it's fun.
They're
unbelievable
in that game.
They are absolute wreckers on the outside. They absolutely wreck it. It's fun. Did you notice the gameplay being dramatically different?
No, feels like Madden.
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty similar. Presentation, pretty similar.
Yeah.
Not much different.
I think they added that momentum thing that if you're in a real game, the home team, if they start getting some things going, they can get some momentum that makes it difficult for you. But other than that, it feels very similar.
Yeah, I was playing against my oldest, and I was being the Browns, and I got that with Nick Chubb, where he basically became Super Tecmo Bo Jackson, and or Christian Okoye, like you just couldn't tackle him. One man was not taking down Nick Chubb, like that wasn't going to happen. There was too much momentum for Nick Chubb at that point. It was just not going to happen.
No.
Interesting over the weekend, the Jaguars trade Gardner Minshew to Philly.
Yep.
For a 6th round pick. And then they played in their game against Dallas. Trevor Lawrence played quite a bit and looked pretty good, as he would. He's legit dude. They get a 6th back. I saw Kay Adams on Good Morning Football saying the whole time when they were acting like it was a quarterback competition, giving Minshew all those reps, they were doing that to bring up his value. I tend to think that probably the opposite. It was kind of silly.
Did it work? We got a conditional 6th instead of a 7th?
Conditional 6th.
Which is the lowest that it can be? So was that worth potentially slowing, even if minutely, Trevor Lawrence's development to get a 6th instead of a 7th? I mean, now look, if Andrew Berry's your GM, a 6th may as well be a 1st or a 2nd. But
those are 1s for us.
If it's not, it's still a 6th.
Yeah, still a 6th. Not much you could do there, Coach. Kind of is what it is. Interesting goings-on in Indianapolis today. Gibby, you had the Carson Wentz, so he's down with COVID, close contact. And of course, he's been, anti on the vax side of things. What would that theoretically mean for him? What does that mean for them as they're now getting close to game week preparation?
So it sounds like the Colts today, by the way, has any team been more snake bitten this preseason?
Been hard.
With all the guys, with everything going on with Wentz and Quentin Nelson, and then T.Y. Hilton over the weekend now has a disc issue in his neck. He's going to miss games. I don't even know what that means, but it can't be good.
No.
So the Colts placed 3 guys on the reserve COVID list today. Carson Wentz, Zach Pascal, their wide receiver, and their starting center, Ryan Kelly. All are close contacts with a staff member who tested positive. Back in 5 days as long as they remain negative and asymptomatic. Wentz was supposed to return to team drills today.
Yeah, from his foot injury.
Yeah,
so
he's only been doing individuals.
I thought he was put on this and he's already back today. No. He's done for 10, right?
He was going
he's
to
done for 5.
For 5.
As long as he doesn't test positive and doesn't have any symptoms, he'll be back in 5 days. But today was the first day he was supposed to be back with the team in team drills.
Wow. This is going to be wild in the season. Do you two sense, you guys are closer to it than I am, do you sense that there will be any amendment to the testing policies once we go from 80 to 53?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
I do. I think it will be, the frequency will increase.
I mean, we've basically been told whatever the preseason rules were, throw them out the door, and we'll let you know in the next 7 to 10 days what the regular season looks like. And by that, we'll tell you what the first 3 weeks of the season looks like.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a sliding scale on this.
Yes.
So for people who are like, well, wait, I thought this. Listen, this thing's moving. So you're going to have to move with it. And the one thing, and we said this last year it was, look, deliver a television product. That was last year. That's what last year was about. Deliver a television product to your partners on time. Mission accomplished. This year it's that, and let's get some people back in the stands.
Yep.
So those objectives you saw a year ago, you got the games in. I think you'll see this year whatever is necessary to make sure games are delivered and games are played in front of fans. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting because the league has said, we're not going to move the schedule around.
No.
I don't know if you should have said that.
I think it's
well, and go ahead, Z.
I think it's going to be fine, and with the numbers and the way that the policy is currently set up, you're not going to have widespread wipeouts as long as guys are vaccinated.
Right.
Yeah, I mean you can't have what happened to the Titans again last week. I mean they've had 2 major outbreaks in the last year.
Right. Yeah. Well, they were at the heart of. I mean, that's how Pittsburgh lost their bye week.
Yes.
Was with that a year ago, and we've seen the college has already come out. A lot of the college things, big Power 5 conferences have said, look, if you have COVID outbreaks, then you're forfeiting. Like that's it. We're not moving anything. It's a loss for you if that happens. It's far more organized here, and I think far less likely that you will see those outbreaks on the NFL side of things. So that's where you sit on this point around the league, and obviously a lot to get to on that front. Still so much more to come. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. you live and breathe football, you know sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find your gambling is affecting other parts of your life, get some help, get some tips on responsible gambling at keepitfunohio.com. Well, Dr. Z, you got to see another stadium yesterday. Give us your reviews of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Incredible. It's an incredible facility down there in Atlanta. So much better than the old Georgia Dome. It's not even funny. It's stunning. When you're in it, it's huge, feels intimate. Watching the top open up, the way that it does, that kind of telescopic lens opening, it was awesome. I love it. Loved it.
Go ahead, Gibby.
So our team was in the auxiliary locker room. We were not in the main visitor locker room.
Why?
I don't know how many people are aware of this.
Well, I think you're making a lot of them aware of it. I wasn't aware.
There is one gentleman by the name of Kanye West who is living in the facility, in the stadium still. You could almost call him a squatter, and they basically are trying to get him out in time for week 1. The locker room we were in last night was the auxiliary.
Basically, why can't they just get him out?
I am telling you, this is from people on the team.
Remove the man. He's got homes.
Yeah. Go back to one. They said he brought in thousands of dollars of furniture. He's got a recording studio. He owns the locker room. I don't know. Is he a minority owner?
What do you mean he owns the locker room?
He is in the locker room. The visitor locker room, as you saw last night, is not the actual visitor locker room. Kanye West is living in the visitor locker room.
I love you. Are we sure this isn't Wednesday night taped?
Yeah, this is confirmed.
This is the real deal.
Yes.
This Georgia Today, the scenes behind the scenes of Kanye West's residency at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Thank you.
He's living in a private space.
Who let him in?
I have no idea. But people see him all the time. He's got 5 or 6 bodyguards that are with him 24 hours a day that rotate. You can't go near that area of the stadium.
I don't understand.
He doesn't own it.
No, he does not own it.
He's literally
Why did we
living
wait till now to talk about this?
Stadium.
I'm interested in this for 20 minutes.
Yeah, how do you bring this up?
25 seconds.
There you go. I'll leave you with that. Always leave them wanting more, kids.
I'm going to need to get some more information.